Everything went wrong for Meghan this week at exactly the same time, across multiple completely separate fronts in a way that made the individual problems impossible to separate from each other. And when you lay it all out together, the picture that emerges is not just a bad news cycle. It is something more structural and more revealing than that. A set of problems that have been building beneath the surface for longer than the official narrative has been willing to acknowledge.
As ever, it remains amateur hour at Meghan Markle's brand. As ever, in fact, it has gotten obviously worse since Netflix left. As Meghan Markle attempts to sort of try and get the brand to work, she's decided to add her own aesthetic.
137,000 unsold jars. A rebrand that arrived with a typo on its own homepage. A promo video that sent the internet into full mockery mode. A Mother's Day tribute that generated more questions than warmth. Palace bullying allegations resurfacing in British media. And renewed public debate about the children's titles. All of it landing simultaneously in the same week. All of it feeding the same underlying conversation about a project that is under more pressure than its presentation has suggested.
Meghan dropped a new as ever promo video on Monday afternoon, and the entire internet had the same reaction inside 9 minutes.
So today we are going to walk through each of these threads carefully. Not to pile on for the sake of it, but because understanding why each individual thing went wrong is the only way to understand what is actually happening at a structural level beneath all of it. The typo on the homepage, the borrowed kitchen, the 26-unit daily sales rate, these are not random individual mishaps. They are symptoms. And symptoms point towards something. Let's start with the brand. Because the rebrand itself, before anything else went wrong this week, before the video, before the typo, before Mother's Day, was already a signal worth reading carefully.
Public has a right to know that at the same time that Meghan was making all of these outrageous and untrue accusations about the British royal family, her treatment of staff behind the scenes was abominable.
It told you something about where things stood before the camera started rolling. About a year ago, Meghan launched, as ever, as a deeply personal passion project. The framing was carefully constructed. This was not another celebrity lifestyle brand, she insisted repeatedly in interviews and promotional materials. This was something authentic, inspired by her garden, her kitchen, her love of hosting people at her table. The pitch was built around warmth, intimacy, and the idea that real life and real food could be genuinely aspirational without being inaccessible or cold. It was supposed to feel like something a friend who happened to have very good taste would share with you over coffee on a Sunday morning. The original launch attracted significant attention. The jam jars with their handwritten labels and the personal story behind them generated substantial media coverage. People were curious. Curiosity translated into initial purchases for many people who wanted to see what it was.
Crappier than ever. That is as ever after its latest rebrand from Meghan Markle.
The brand appeared to have real momentum in its opening weeks, and then the sales numbers started leaking out. Reports claimed approximately 137,000 boxes of fruit spread were sitting in storage, unsold. The brand was allegedly moving around 26 units a day across the entire operation. People did the maths online almost immediately, and it was not flattering. At that rate, critics calculated it would take years to clear the existing inventory. And these are food products with actual expiry dates. Preserves do not wait indefinitely while a brand figures out its direction. The tea line reportedly struggled too. Hot toddy kits that sounded charming in promotional interviews apparently failed to convert curiosity into meaningful volume. The baking mixes tied to the Netflix partnership quietly disappeared after Netflix reportedly stepped away from that element of the project earlier this year, leaving open questions about what happens to the remaining stock that had already been produced and warehoused.
Meghan's aura, I can tell you what the reading is. I mean, it's a dark cloud. She's a downer. She's greedy. She's a grab.
The point is that when a brand completely changes direction after barely a year in operation, audiences do not read that as confidence in a new vision. They read it as course correction prompted by a problem. Strong brands expand outward naturally when they are working. They add products, deepen their identity, build momentum through success. They do not pivot the core identity and rename the brand before they have fully established what the original identity was. And so when the rebrand arrived, it arrived with a question already attached. What exactly went wrong that made this necessary? That question was already sitting in the air before the promo video launched, before the website went live, before anyone had seen a single frame of the new campaign. And the promo video did not answer it. It made it louder.
Markle is attempting to steer as ever into positive waters, and I would argue failing pretty miserably at it. Her latest series of pictures and videos and images are more pretentious than ever before in a time where people are paying more than ever for simple things like gas and groceries. Meghan Markle is telling you that her brand is expensive, but yet cheap at the same time.
If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people. Now let's talk about the promo video, because this is where the week really started to accelerate, where the mockery found its sharpest edge, and where the gap between the brand's stated identity and its visible execution became impossible to avoid. The video dropped on a Monday afternoon across Meghan's Instagram, the official As Ever account, and the company website simultaneously. Soft piano music, cinematic lighting, carefully controlled shadows, the kind of visual language that luxury brands use to communicate that their product is not just a product but an experience, an identity, a feeling about who you are when you choose it. The campaign was focused on two products, orange marmalade and raspberry preserve. Within 90 minutes of the video going live, fashion bloggers had already identified nearly every outfit Meghan wore in the footage. Every pose, every angle, every wardrobe choice looked deliberate. The word people kept using was engineered. Nothing appeared accidental or spontaneous. The opening scene showed Meghan barefoot, sitting cross-legged on a kitchen counter beside a tray of cookies, flipping through a book. The setting looked warm, domestic, casual. But reports noted the kitchen was not her actual kitchen. Her real kitchen apparently has a much darker farmhouse-style aesthetic that did not fit the soft luxury look the brand wanted. A different property was allegedly used for the entire shoot.
I think she's sort of starting to lose interest as the brand isn't doing well. I think she's kind of like, I don't want to take the time. I just want to get this out. I just want to get this sold. And I get it, but like she wants to apparently run a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar empire, and she ain't going to do it like this.
This matters more than it might seem. The entire brand is supposed to be built on authenticity, on the idea that Meghan is sharing her real domestic life, her real passions, her real home. The campaign is supposed to make audiences feel they are being invited into something genuine. Discovering that the kitchen being presented as the heart of this authentic lifestyle is not her kitchen at all is the kind of detail that does not just embarrass the campaign, it undermines its entire premise. Then came the second look. Meghan appeared in a floor-length ivory halter gown with an open back, identified by fashion watchers as the Stella McCartney dress from her royal wedding reception, paired with an oversized cream blazer, holding a glass of champagne while appearing to promote marmalade. The gap between the product and the styling was so large that even fashion-friendly outlets struggled to frame it as coherent. The most common response online was simply confusion about what was being sold.
She's still freaked out after all the stock reveals in January, and I think those were true, and I think she's freaking out about it, and I think they've wasted a bunch of their money in her As Ever stock, and it's not moving. And again, there was a report from the New York Post that there's some sort of warehouse for Netflix, like a PR room, where it's just stacked with As Ever goods, and they're just basically giving it away to staff members who want it.
The third look accelerated the mockery. A deep red silk slip dress with a plunging neckline, pouring champagne in slow motion. The visual language of the whole sequence was closer to a luxury fragrance campaign or a late-night cable film than to anything associated with artisan food products. Comment sections across every platform started making the same comparison within hours. The moment that generated the most specific and widespread discussion came when Meghan leaned back, tilted her head, closed her eyes, and slowly moved her hands across herself while the camera held in slow motion. The question that appeared everywhere was the same. What does any of this have to do with jam? And here is the specific detail that crystallized the criticism more than anything else. At no point in the entire video does Meghan eat the product. She lifts the jar, holds it, displays it, examines it carefully for the camera. She never opens it. She never takes a taste. She does not drink the tea either. The products function as props in a fashion editorial rather than as food she actually enjoys. For a brand whose identity is built on real, genuine, homemade pleasure, that absence is impossible to explain away. One viral comment stuck because it captured the feeling precisely. She looked like someone wandering through a stranger's mansion pretending they own it. It spread everywhere not because it was cruel, but because it articulated something specific that viewers had been struggling to put into words. It spread everywhere because it put into words something audiences were reading in every frame of the footage. The website launch then added its own entirely separate set of problems on top of everything else. Problems that would have been avoidable with basic quality control and a proper pre-launch review. The redesigned As Ever site arrived with a dark, moody aesthetic that people said felt closer to an autumn fashion catalog than to a spring food brand trying to communicate warmth and domestic pleasure. Heavy shadows, muted tones, oversized photography filling the screen. An elaborate navigation structure organized like a massive lifestyle empire. The problem with that structure was immediately visible. This is a brand with a relatively small product range. The architecture of the site implied a company 10 times the size, with dozens of product categories and a back catalog of established lines. The reality, a handful of products still trying to gain commercial traction, sat uncomfortably inside a site designed to project established scale. Critics pointed out the incongruity directly. The branding was trying to communicate something about what the brand aspires to be rather than what it currently is. And audiences, particularly ones who had already been reading about the sales numbers, found that gap between the projected image and the apparent reality difficult to take seriously. Then there was the recipe on the homepage that referred to the product as raspberry jam rather than raspberry fruit spread, the name the brand actually uses. Two different names for the same product on the same website. Screenshots circulated fast. The company's own digital presence appeared confused about its own terminology, which is a particularly difficult thing to explain for a brand that has spent considerable effort presenting itself as carefully considered and premium. And then the typo. In large text, prominently placed, "You're beautiful. Y-O-U-R, not your." A grammatical error so basic that most word processors flag it automatically. The correction was made quickly, but not before screenshots had reached every major platform. On its own, it would be an embarrassing but forgettable moment. In the context of everything else landing that week, it became a symbol. Critics were not just laughing at the grammar. They were using it to make a larger point about the quality of the operation behind the brand. About rushed decisions, weak review processes, and what appeared to be an absence of the kind of professional oversight that catches these things before they go live. When your brand identity is built on careful curation, premium aesthetics, and the implication that everything has been thought through with intention, a typo in large text on the homepage of your relaunched website is not just a typo. It is a signal about what is happening behind the presentation. Subscribe to Palace Insider and drop a comment below because the conversation this week has been seriously good. One more element of the video worth noting. For a brand whose entire stated premise is built around gathering people together, sharing meals, hosting guests, and creating warmth through food and connection, there is not a single genuine social interaction anywhere in the campaign footage. No dinner party, no friends laughing together, no family sitting down to a meal, nobody actually enjoying the products in company. It is just Meghan, alone in designer outfits, moving through empty spaces, displaying jars and holding glasses. The product that is supposed to represent shared pleasure and domestic connection is presented in complete isolation. The aesthetic communicates the opposite of the brand's stated values. Once you notice it, it is impossible to unsee, and several viral posts made sure everyone noticed it. Now let's talk about Mother's Day, because this one generated its own separate wave of criticism that ran largely independently from the brand story, and the two waves hitting simultaneously made for a particularly difficult week to navigate. In the United States, Mother's Day fell on May 10th. Meghan has publicly described her mother Doria as her biggest support system in interview after interview, in documentaries, in her own written pieces. Doria was present at the royal wedding. She has been present at significant public family moments. The closeness of their relationship has been woven consistently throughout the public narrative Meghan has built about herself for years. It is one of the most emotionally resonant elements of that narrative. On Mother's Day morning, what appeared on the As Ever website were two luxury candles tied to Archie and Lilibet's birthdays, available for purchase on the day itself. No tribute to Doria in the morning of a day specifically dedicated to honoring mothers. Product promotion came first. The tribute to Doria appeared later, tucked inside a Disneyland photo carousel that was primarily focused on Archie's birthday celebrations rather than on Doria herself. The image that circulated most widely as Meghan's public Mother's Day acknowledgement to her own mother was a photo of Doria at Disneyland interacting with the costumed Mickey Mouse character during a park greeting, with Mickey kissing her hand. Some people found it charming and entirely in keeping with a family birthday trip. Others said it felt oddly casual as the primary public acknowledgement of someone who has been presented consistently as Meghan's most important relationship and central support system. The juxtaposition was hard to miss. Birthday candle sales on Mother's Day morning, followed by a Disney mascot photo as the main tribute. Around the same time, reports began circulating in British media suggesting Doria may no longer be living full-time at the Montecito property. Claimed disagreements over parenting approaches and family dynamics were cited, though none of it has been officially confirmed and the reports should be treated with appropriate caution. They may be entirely inaccurate. But here is why unconfirmed reports landed with particular weight regardless of their accuracy. The image of Meghan and Doria as uniquely and exceptionally close has been such a deliberate and consistent part of the public Sussex narrative that any suggestion of friction, confirmed or speculative, creates a specific kind of dissonance for audiences who have absorbed that story. The public presentation and the private reality suddenly feel like they might not match. And once that question is open in people's minds, a Disney mascot photo on Mother's Day does not close it. Now to the palace bullying allegations. Because these resurfaced this week in British media, and the timing, landing alongside everything else, made them impossible to treat as a separate and unrelated story. Whether the connection is causal or coincidental, the effect was that they arrived in the same news cycle and fed the same conversation. The complaints from former staff about working conditions in the Sussex household have never been resolved in the public record. They have been contested, denied, and complicated by the confidentiality agreements that govern palace employment. The full internal report is almost certainly never going to be made public. That means what the public has access to is fragments, leaks, secondhand accounts, and the observable pattern of departures from the household over time. What keeps getting raised by royal commentators is a consistent thread running through the accounts that have emerged. Nearly every experienced advisor, communications professional, or senior staff member who reportedly tried to challenge decisions, flag concerns about public direction, or push back on choices eventually left. Some under reportedly difficult circumstances, some with very little public explanation. The pattern of experienced professional people departing has been one of the most consistent features of the Sussex operation across both the palace years and the years since. What makes this relevant to the brand crisis, in the view of many critics, is the direct line they draw between a leadership dynamic that reportedly drove away professional advisors and the commercial errors that are now visible. Experienced, empowered professional teams catch things before they go live. They review the website copy before it publishes. They assess the campaign tone relative to the economic environment. They stress test the product market fit before committing to large production runs. They ask uncomfortable questions about whether the numbers are working. When those people are not present or are present but not being genuinely heard, those catches do not happen. And the products go out with typos. The kitchens are borrowed. The inventory accumulates. And the rebrands arrive without solving the underlying problem. Critics are careful to note that the bullying allegations specifically remain contested and unproven in any formal sense. But the pattern of experienced people leaving, that part is documented and visible. And the connection between a leadership environment that does not retain or empower experienced professionals and an operation that keeps making avoidable professional errors is not a speculative leap. It is a fairly direct observation about cause and effect. There is also a broader context worth naming directly, because it sits underneath everything else in this story and has not received enough attention in most of the coverage. This campaign landed during a period when a significant proportion of ordinary people are genuinely struggling financially. Food prices have been persistently elevated. Energy costs remain a real household pressure. Rent, mortgages, the cumulative weight of several years of economic difficulty, these are not abstract background conditions. They are the immediate lived reality of the audience this brand is trying to reach. Into that environment, a campaign featuring floor-length designer gowns worth thousands of dollars, slow-motion champagne pours, cinematic lighting, and premium pricing for artisan fruit spread is not just a marketing miscalculation. It is a tone problem of a specific and damaging kind. It signals a degree of disconnection from the everyday reality of the intended audience that is very difficult to recover from once audiences have registered it. The brand was supposed to communicate that Meghan is real, grounded, and genuinely connected to the same things ordinary people care about: good food, family gatherings, the pleasure of a well-stocked kitchen. The campaign communicated something very different. It communicated a vision of domestic life so aspirational as to feel unrecognizable, produced in a borrowed setting, by someone wearing outfits that cost more than most people's monthly earnings, promoting a product that most people would look at and ask why it costs what it costs when alternatives are available for a fraction of the price at any supermarket. The gap between the stated brand identity and the visible execution is the core and foundational problem. And it is not a gap that a new logo or a more carefully worded website resolves. 137,000 jars, 26 units a day, a commercial runway that does not reach the finish line before the products expire. Those are not abstract numbers. They represent real production costs already incurred, real storage costs accumulating daily, and a real commercial problem that the rebrand does not address because a rebrand changes the name on the jar, not the fundamental question of whether enough people want to buy what is in it. The As Ever brand was supposed to contribute meaningfully and at real scale to the financial picture the Sussexes face. A viable revenue stream helping to meet the multi-million-dollar annual costs of their lifestyle and security in Montecito. Based on the available reporting, it is not performing anywhere near the required scale. The distance between what the brand needs to generate to matter and what it appears to be generating is significant. And a week like this one does not close that distance. The question worth sitting with is not just whether the current campaign direction can be corrected. It is whether the brand has a genuine enough value proposition, a clear enough identity, and a credible enough connection between its stated ethos and its actual execution to build the kind of customer loyalty that makes a food brand commercially viable over time. Curiosity gets you the first purchase. Genuine product satisfaction and a consistent experience that lives up to what the brand promises gets you the repeat purchases that sustain a business over months and years. Most food brands succeed or fail on repeat purchase rates, not on launch attention. The question for As Ever is not whether people are curious, they clearly are. The question is whether that curiosity, once it converts into a purchase, is generating the kind of satisfaction that produces a second purchase, and a third, and a pattern of regular buying that makes the inventory numbers work. Right now, the evidence available suggests that conversion from curiosity to sustained loyalty is not happening at the scale the underlying numbers require. A rebrand helps if the product underneath the relaunched identity is genuinely compelling at its price point. It struggles if the core question, why should someone choose this over what is available elsewhere at a fraction of the cost, has not been clearly and persuasively answered. The week that just passed made that question significantly harder to avoid. The typo, the borrowed kitchen, the video that generated mockery rather than appetite, the Mother's Day product placement, the palace bullying allegations resurfacing at exactly the wrong moment. None of these individually would have been fatal in isolation. Together, they formed a picture of a brand operation under significant and visible real pressure, making exactly the kinds of errors that serious, empowered professional teams prevent before launch, doing so visibly and publicly in a week when the scrutiny was already at its highest point. 137,000 jars, 26 units a day, a trajectory that does not reach the finish line before the products reach their expiry. The week that just passed did not help any of those numbers. And the week that comes next will need to do something considerably more effective than this one did if the underlying commercial situation is going to change direction in any meaningful way. So here is the question. Do you think As Ever has a genuine path to commercial viability, or has this week done damage that goes beyond what a rebranding exercise can fix? Drop your answer in the comments below. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next on all of these stories as they develop. And a like really does help us reach more people who want the honest picture. See you in the next one. And that is where the week left things. Not with a resolution, not with a clear path forward, but with a set of questions that the next few weeks are going to need to answer. About the brand, about the operation behind it, and about whether the gap between what As Ever says it is and what it actually appears to be can close before the inventory does.